This is George Dionne of the Rock is George podcast, and this is a KNAC.com exclusive interview with drummer GIL MOORE of the Canadian hard rock act Triumph.
It's been a wild day. I don't know if Chip mentioned, but today up here was where are you, by the way?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Yeah. So in Canada, today's Music Monday.
Oh,
So yeah, and the event was hosted for the Coalition for Music Education here at Metalworks. So it's been
oh,
a wild day. Yeah, there was 200,000 kids in elementary schools and high schools and coast to coast participating and singing a Triumph song, which was this year's anthem. So it was pretty, something you'd never expect in as a musician to have something like that happen. It's pretty cool.
that's a national event where you're at in all of Canada?
Yeah, their signature event is called Music Monday. It's once a year, and they get all the high schools choirs, all the elementary school singing classes, and they try to get them to sing one song at one time, approximately at lunchtime, depending on their time zone. And they all sing the same song, and they circulate all the music to all the music departments and stuff. And it worked out well. And then what we did here is we had several choirs come in and several groups from around the GTA come in and perform beforehand, before the actual kickoff of the Triumph song. And yeah, it was a good event for sure.
Which Triumph song did everybody do?
Hold on.
Nice.
Yeah, and Rick recorded a new version of the song in honor of this event uh, with a band that they specifically wanted us to have students and teachers involved. And so Rick did a beautiful job re-recording the song using other students and teachers and also a choir. So it was a really nice recording.
Feel like America could use something like that, but it'd be like a Taylor Swift song, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean it's a great idea to pull, people together in schools. And I think that, probably part of the reason that, they picked our song is just because the positive message in the lyrics. So, you would want something inspirational at a time when more inspiration, I think, is needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, today you and I are set up to talk about Magic Power All-Star Tribute to Triumph. It comes out June 6th through Roundhill Records. How did you get involved, besides being in Triumph? How did you get involved with this release?
Well, Mike Klink is really the master behind the big board and a master in hard rock. And he did I'll call it the creative on this. In other words, he figured out, who would be the right musicians. And then of course you have to see if they have interest. If they don't have interest in participating, well, that's the end of that. But he was able to put together an absolutely stellar team of the best musicians in hard rock, I would say, that you could find anywhere, and orchestrated this. And all we really did was, when songs were getting developed, is we would hear, kind of like a rough mix of it, to just give some input. And we were thrilled all the way along. I mean, I wouldn't be second guessing Mike Klink anytime soon, I could tell you that.
It's absolutely a great collection of musicians, and sometimes with these all-star projects, some are good, some are bad. I'd certainly put this in the good category overall.
Oh, thanks, George. I appreciate that.
One of the songs you have out ahead of the release is a cover of Rock and Roll Machine. It was done by Sebastian Bach, formerly of Skid Row. From what I understand, he actually performed with Triumph back in 1993, and he sang this actual song.
Yeah, Sebastian's been a buddy. I mean, he's a Canadian. I grew up in Peterborough, so not too far from Toronto. And you know, uh, We love him, and Mike reached out to him because he was one of the guys like right away. He thought of initially like Phil X. That was his first phone call, but I think his second or third phone call was to Sebastian when he started going through like, well, who would be the people that would probably want to do this, and I told Mike at one point that Sebastian had done Rock and Roll Machine with us live more than once on stage, just like an impromptu jump on stage and sing the song. And he kills it. I mean, and I like his vocal on it better than my own. So what can I say?
And you mentioned Phil X, who also appears on this collection, who also played with Triumph from 92 to 93. He did Allied Forces. You said that Phil was the first guy that Mike picked the phone up on. Specifically, why Phil?
Well, because Phil was a member of Triumph. He joined Mike and I after Rick decided to do his solo work, and we recorded Edge of Excess with him, and we toured with him in America, and we've remained very close, and to this day. So the first song that Mike recorded, actually, he decided to do Allied Forces first, and I think that he thought maybe initially that Phil would be the perfect shredder to put the horsepower into that song. But Phil's vocals are outstanding as well. So Phil sings it and plays guitar on it, and I think he just did a terrific job.
Another single that has been released ahead of the album is "Laid on the Line" by Dee Snider. Kind of took me by surprise that Dee was on this collection because he doesn't do a lot of these, and I'd assume it's a testament to his fandom of Triumph.
Well, I think it's certainly a testament to his vocal chops because if you were going to pick a song that's hard to sing, that would be one. That was Rick's vocal and a lot of high notes and so on and so forth. And Mike was totally in favor of Dee. He said like Dee, he's worked with Dee before. He said Dee can sing anything. He's got more talent than most people realize. And Mike Klink was, as usual, was correct, and Dee killed it. And it's nice too because it's a different sound. It's not it's not a copy or an impersonation or an emulation of what Rick does. Like Dee's got his own signature, and it's more of a hard rock cutting edge voice. And the boys in Triumph, we very much liked what Dee did.
Now, obviously, these are world class musicians, from Mickey Thomas to Lawrence Gowan to Jason Scheff, Nancy Wilson. Was there, even though they're all pros, were there any performances that surprised you, or the final product surprised you?
Well, I mean, I guess the surprises would be more along the lines of the original uh, takes, the original interpretations of the music. So you mentioned Nancy Wilson from Heart, and um, I love Nancy Wilson's vocals, and she is, that I call it kind of a lilting, kind of like her vocals remind me of the waves on the ocean. They're very soothing, the way she phrases, and that's a very, very unique, I think, style that she has. So for her to take a song like Fight the Good Fight and make it her own song and own it, that was something I was really surprised by the way she did that. And the other one that really was a total shock when we first got to hear it was with Envy of None doing Blinding Light Show. Now, of course, some friends of ours, Alex Lifeson's a very good golf buddy of mine, as well as a music buddy, and Andy Curran is a close friend, and all of them really, Alfio and David, all of them on the record. Maya was really the only member of the band, her vocals, that great vocalist that I've not had the pleasure of meeting, but yeah, when they took it in the direction they took it, and I mean, if you listen to Blinding Light Show by Triumph and listen to Blinding Light Show by Envy of None, you wouldn't even know it's the same song. So those are the two that, for me, that were very big surprises because they were so unique, and I thought that was great because I wouldn't wanted. It's not about playing the songs necessarily how we played them. In some cases, it was great. Some of the tracks are very similar, and it's just, different instrumentalists and different vocalists, but to actually take the arrangement and just flip it is also really cool.
Joey Belladonna of Anthrax kind of surprised me because I hadn't heard him do something really that clean. Normally, Anthrax is a much, much heavier sound.
Yeah, so Joey's, we have some amazing drummer vocalists on here, and Joey obviously he's smoking good drummer, and who knew he was going to be able to hit all those high notes that Rick Emmett hits, and yeah, I hear that might even be the next single. I'm not sure, but yeah, again, it's a stellar job, and Deen Castronovo from Journey. He sang one of Rick's songs, Never Surrender, which is extremely hard to sing. And a great drummer, and he does all the drums in Journey, but he can sing like no tomorrow. I mean, Deen Castronovo's voice is second to none. All of these vocalists, really, when you look at them, you mentioned Lawrence Gowan is another one. Larry is just like, holy smokes, doesn't get any better. He did Somebody's Out There. And Mickey Thomas, I've always been a fan of. And I remember when that came in, and I played Mickey's version of Spellbound for my wife, and she said, "Oh, I like your voice better." And I thought, "That's my wife talking." She says, "What do you think?" And I said, "I'm putting my money on Mickey Thomas right now." I said, "I love his voice." Yeah.
So, is this release sort of in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of Triumph's founding?
It's turned out to be, yes. I mean, a lot of things have ended up landing in the same time frame, George. Like what we were talking about earlier, the National Music Education Celebration for up here in Canada, using Hold On, it happened at the same time, and it's funny how you plan things, and they're all going to be kind of one at a time, and then everything lands at the same time. But COVID had a lot to do with this record. It looked to me like it would never be completed at various times as COVID was, going through phases. You couldn't get musicians in studios, but credit Mike Klink, he figured out a way to get everybody together one way or the other by hook or by crook, even if he had to record one at a time. He just did whatever it took. He had to travel sometimes to get different musicians' performances, but yeah, it seems like a lot of things have just landed right on top of the 50th anniversary for the band. So yeah.
So why don't we
all at once?
Why don't we go back 50 years to Triumph signing their first record deal with Attic for the release of your self-titled album? Tell me how that all went down.
Well, that's really about Mike Levine's skills. I mean, Rick and I didn't have the experience that Mike had when the band started. So Mike had some connections that were really great, and he also has experience in studios that we didn't have. So he knew how to get around the studio, and he knew how to talk to record labels. And he actually had our deal with Attic before we found Rick, which was quite amazing. And I remember Mike told Tom Williams at Attic Records, he says, "Well, who's the guitar player?" And he says, "Don't worry, we'll have a great guitar player." So our first poster for the collectors that have one is a devil's head, and you don't know who the band members are because there's just a picture of a devil's head in a flaming sea. And for whatever reason, we thought that was, I don't know what that was, some kind of a, image that we thought was cool at that stage of the game. But you don't have a guitar player, you need some kind of a graphic, I guess.
Well, in the album cover for the first version of the album, you guys are kind of coming out of this flame, and you look kind of ominous.
Yeah, that was a failed album cover attempt. We said to the art director, we said, well, our first was very Spinal Tap-ish when we're getting into this stuff, but these are true stories. So of course we said, look, our image so far is we have a devil's head and he's in a sea full of flames. And he's like, well, flames don't really go on water. And I said, well, pretend there was an oil slick and the oil was on fire. Okay, I get it. So what are we going to do? And we said, well, we want to be seen to be coming out of the flames. So he was trying to figure out how he's going to do it. So he got all this goop that we had to put on our face and just smear it on and pull our hair and with all this like grease basically to make it look like we were in a cauldron or something. And so we always hated the album cover, and finally the label hated it too, and they changed it. Kind of like Rock and Roll Machine, we went the other way around. We had a good album cover, and then they replaced it with a crummy one, and then there was a crummy one version too, and then they always back to the original. It's very funny about these things with artwork, how they work out, but like a lot of rock bands, I think there's these Spinal Tap moments that's they all have back in their closet somewhere. We have our share of them.
Better to get them out of the way early than later in your career.
We still have our Spinal Tap moments, you know.
So back when you
That's the
released,
only way to have a good time, though, George. I mean, when we were on the road, I've been asked this many times, like, how did you guys manage to do this for 15 straight years and never punch each other's lights out? And I said, well, humor is the answer. I said, we got pulled together because we approached everything as a three-piece power trio. We said this is kind of like a sports team. So we'd be playing arenas. We'd be in the dressing room with, the Philadelphia Flyers dressing room, or the New York Rangers dressing room, or the Toronto Maple Leafs dressing room. So we would get that kind of game face on because we felt like if we go out on stage and one of us stinks, there's no place to hide in a trio. There's just no place to hide. If we had a keyboard player that could play nice big fat pads or a rhythm guitar player that could keep sawing, that would be different. But we didn't have that. So we were always going on stage like with this kind of we've got to make it happen attitude. Did I answer your question? I don't know where I'm
you
going with
did,
this.
you did.
Okay.
So you were just getting your feet wet with this first album. When did you sense that Triumph was really taking off? Was it around Allied Forces?
No, it happened instantaneously because before it actually worked on radio, it has to happen in the one-on-one environment of a live show. So every musician knows what it's like to fail because that's normally what you get conditioned to. And I know I was conditioned to failure, and so was Mike, and so was Rick. Maybe Mike a little less. His bands were a little better than my bands and Rick's bands. Anyhow, we can debate that later. We joke about that. But yeah, truthfully, when we started to rehearse, we thought this is different, and we rehearsed in a bowling alley here in Mississauga. And we were getting very pumped up because we felt like in our rehearsals, we were like, I don't know. This feels different than any band I've ever been in. I think maybe we didn't want to, jinx it and say we've got lightning in a bottle, but we thought something special here that we've never, any of us experienced in any other bands. So we played our very first gig in a high school gym in September of 1975. And it was instantaneous because as a musician, when you played as many, at that time, the same number of these high school dances or community hall type gigs that, bands play when they're starting up, you know what an audience reaction is. And normally, my bands was like, oh, time to go to the washroom. And so you get used to that rejection, and then it's getting yelled at and saying, why don't you guys play more covers? If you guys would play more material from the charts instead of that loud crap you play, more people would like you. So you're used to those scoldings as well. But when Triumph first played that very first show, all of a sudden we saw people getting closer and closer and closer to the stage until they were pressing on us and they were coming at us like this. And then we were starting to see this kind of look. And when you see that kind of jaw drop look, which we later coined a phrase in Triumph, one of our phrases we coined was the net gasp effect, which was related to like how jaw dropping is this moment in the show or not. And yeah, that's what we could see on that very first gig in a little high school, but we could see net gasp effect. And we went, okay, for some reason or other, it just the right combination. So we knew we were going for a ride. We didn't know whether it was going to be, the stairway to heaven or the highway to hell, but we knew we were going somewhere.
So were there any difficulties where you had, kind of two different record distribution things going on? You had your albums released in Canada, but then there'd be like a hiccup and like your album wouldn't get released in the US right away. It'd come at a later time, and then just trying to keep everything promoted properly.
That's never ever been simple, you know. Um, and it just reminds me of, Artie from Polymer Records and Spinal Tap. I mean, those moments are real. And every band, every band manager, they always want the label to concentrate on their band and, like, forget about everyone else, just promote us. And there's always that competition, just like there is for an audience. There's a competition for an audience. So yeah, we had our ups and downs with labels, but we had a lot of great folks that, both at RCA and at Universal, that we became very fond of, and that we didn't always hit a home run when we were at bat. Well, we got a lot of men on base, and we got across home plate a number of times. So it was a very good career through all the various record deals and contracts that we had. And what can I say? We survived.
You mentioned earlier that kind of during the lockdowns, things sort of started falling in place for Triumph, kind of a renewal of Triumph. Would you also say that the documentary that was released in 2021, Rock and Roll Machine, also kind of renewed interest in the band?
Yeah, I mean, I think a number of things happened. I mean, Mike and Rick and I decided in 2008 or seven, yeah, eight, I think, to play a couple of live shows. And we did it because we wanted our kids to see the band that had never seen it. So we went and did Sweden Rock, which, of course, a massive festival over there. And we had a great closing slot on the Friday night. And same thing, we went to Rocklahoma, which is another massive one down by Dallas, Texas. And closed that one out on a Saturday night. And they were just far enough apart that we could get, across the pond and get a rehearsal hall booked and be ready for the show. And that was a great experience. So that kind of lit the fuse as to what was going to come next. And a lot of it too is we started all of a sudden, if you stick around long enough, they start putting you in all these Hall of Fame things. So we were, going and doing those. And people remember you, during those kind of celebrations, and then we start thinking about it ourselves, and you just feel grateful. Like, it's back to what I said 5 minutes ago about, you get used to bands, having a really hard time getting going, getting traction, and it's more about failure than success. And when I mentor kids now and they say, "What's the key to success?" I said the key to success is failure. Once that 2x4 hits you in the forehead enough times, you start to realize it hurts. So you start to look for something else. And I think when we started Triumph, Mike and I realized we wanted to do a power trio, and we weren't going to do it unless we could get a guitar player that in our mind had, that whatever it is, that, say, like a Jimi Hendrix had, that was just something, or an Eric Clapton, that just had something that was, enough that you could have a power trio, because you couldn't have any gaps in a trio like that. So I think that determination or hard-headedness or whatever kind of served us well, when you're that young, and you're that, um, I guess, willing to take gambles, or willing to uh, take shots. You kind of reach inside yourself and you think, well, we probably really don't know what we're doing, but we're going to pretend we do know what we're doing, and we're going to hope it works out. So that's your grandiose strategy.
You mentioned the performance at Sweden Rock Fest. You mentioned the performance at Rocklahoma. Would a 50th anniversary show be out of the question?
Um, well, what's happening as far as 50th anniversary and shows is something that I will say may or may not happen, but it's not the three of us playing live on stage. Paul Dexter, who's our lighting director uh, extraordinaire, who worked with us back in the day, and is a phenomenally talented individual. I got interested in holograms about 5 years ago, and I went to visit Paul, and he was doing Frank Zappa. He really kind of did the first rock and roll hologram. He did Ronnie Dio from Black Sabbath, and did a phenomenal job. And I said, hey, I'm interested in maybe bringing the band back to life through this kind of imagery. And we started working on it. And once I saw it, I said, well, it won't work for Triumph, Paul. And he agreed with me. And I just said, it's about too much movement on stage. Like, it works when you have, say, Ronnie at this downstage center in front of the mic, and he's there and he sings, but he doesn't move very much. Frank Zappa, never moved around a lot as a guitar player. He tended to just kind of sit in one place. But the way that the technology worked back then, the stage was obstructed, so you couldn't really have this kind of thing going on like the Mike Rick choreography that we always had in Triumph. And it wasn't choreographed; it was just how they performed. It was, ad hoc choreography. So we went looking for something different. And, through my school up here in Canada, we had a relationship with Microsoft. And Microsoft had a mixed reality department at that point. We started looking into mixed reality. And now here we are. It's been like three iterations later of the technology. We're now into AI. And we've got a way, we think, to have the first six-piece power trio, which is to bring Mike, Rick, and Gil in virtually into a concert with three younger guys that are, the best in the world at their craft, who can really, really deliver the goods live. And in this concept, this mixed reality concept would be something that's never been done before and be totally unique. So we're hoping to do it. We've been working on it, like I said, for a long time now, and plans for that are within the 50th, George. They're either late this year or perhaps it'll be another year, perhaps be in 26. But that's what we're shooting for. No promises there, but that's a candid backstage view of what's going on in the Triumph world.
The technology, is it similar to what ABBA was doing with avatars, or it more like what Kiss is doing animation wise?
No, zero to do with those concepts.
Okay.
And I do like those concepts, by the way, but they're really set up for a residency, and they're more akin to a movie, an animated film, let's say. And the thing that I wanted to do, because Triumph was a live touring band, and Paul agreed with me on this, we wanted to create something that traveled, that could go from city to city, just like a normal tour. And we didn't want to use really any kind of canned music per se. We really wanted to say, no, either of these tracks have to be Mike Rick and Gil back in the day, live recordings combined with the best players that you can possibly find. And again, Mike Klink factored into this because, of course, we just work with all the best players in rock. And so our plan is right now is that the great Phil X is going to head up the new Triumph. So we're really fingers are crossed. Phil's a busy guy, and he has a lot of demands on him. But that's what we're hoping for right now.
That sounds rather exciting. I actually would look forward to something like that.
It'll be different, I can tell you that. I mean, I think Kiss will do really well doing what I'm going to call the ABBA model, the residency model with a lot of animation and so on and so forth. I think it's great. But this would be, I think, earthier and a lot more surprises, being able to take it from city to city, and not be the same every night. Anyway, I don't want to talk it away because this is easier said than done stuff that I'm talking about. Yeah, that's how we started the band. We took risks, we took challenges, and we, took shots. And this is one that we're trying to do. I think I missed part of your last question there about the film and what did the film do, and did it recreate interest in the band? Well, it most certainly did. And I think maybe it made Mike and Rick think about, what we've done over the years and sort of reflect back on the music we recorded together, and kind of get some wind in our sails in terms of thinking of like what's possible right now. So, being able to assist in this music education project here in Canada for the Coalition for Music Education, get to use our lyrics that are positive. Rick wrote those words a long time ago, but they're very meaningful today in the current environment.
What about new music from Triumph? It's been quite some time.
Well, in the film, we recorded three songs, not new music, but we re-recorded three of our songs, and only there were snippets in the movie. So those three may come out. They were a little rough around the edges because it was so emotional while we were playing. I mean, you had 150 Triumph fans just completely fooled when the curtain dropped and we were behind. They were told beforehand. Of course, in the movie, you can see they were told there was no Mike and Rick and Gil, and before they even got inside the venue, they were told, no, 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 no. Any rumor that you're here that Mike, Rick, and Gil, no, there's no Triumph. And then, of course, we fooled them. So it was pretty emotional because the fans were, some of them were bawling their eyes out. They were so shocked. And I know that Mike and Rick and we could hardly hold it back. Like playing with a lump in your throat is something I've never experienced before. So those are three new tracks that perhaps will be made available at some point. I don't know. And then I don't know, being kind of moved by what's happened with Hold On and this project we just finished. Rick re-recorded. I should have mentioned that Rick re-recorded the song, and he re-recorded it using music teachers and music students and the kids' choir. So, I'm not part of it. Mike's not Mike part of it, but we were cheering Rick on. He did a fantastic job, and it's a great version of Hold On. I mean, I love the video. I don't think it's out yet, but the video with all the kids in it is it's very moving. So maybe we'll get some other ideas like that. I don't know, George. I mean, maybe you can think one up and send it to us and say, why don't you guys do this?
Well, I would
I don't
imagine
know.
outside of Triumph, your studio keeps you busy. Metalworks Studios. I was looking at the cast of musicians that have come in and out of that studio. Fantastic array of people. Obviously, that keeps you busy. You also created a college, a music college, right?
Yeah, I got into, I don't know how I ever got into music education because I was a terrible student, but the truth of it is we just decided we wanted to start training engineers because when music started to go digital around 2000, we saw, a real change taking place on music production, and we were at Metalworks Studios trying to be always at the top of our game. And we felt that the people that were graduating from schools that were teaching music, they weren't getting transitioned, let's say, into the digital domain at a high enough level. So we decided to take that on as a challenge, and that was really the impetus for it. I had no idea what I was getting into, as I had no idea how hard it was to start a school and deal with all the government areas that you had to deal with to get a proper license and do everything according to Hoyle, and not just be some sort of Mickey Mouse operation. Be able to grant diplomas and work with public institutions as well. So I'm really glad I did it because we've expanded to 16 programs. We have an amazing group of graduates now, of course, over 20 years. So we've got people that are doing great things in different areas. One of our very earliest grads, Noel Cadestre, for example, is Drake's engineer has been for over 10 years. And so he's one of the top guys in the world right now. And one of our other recording engineers, Riley Bell, won the Juno Award for Engineer of the Year a couple of years ago. Hasn't even reached 30 years of age, which is pretty phenomenal. So I've found, for me, this has been a great thing to feel like there's all of these young people that have been able to take some of the things that we learned, in the studios, and pass that forward to them and try to give them a head start on a career in music, whether they want to be engineers or they want to be performers, or even our business programming, around copyright and contracts and live touring contracts and all the stuff you need to know if you're going to be a musician and you want to be out there and kind of know what you're doing from the business perspective as well.
Well, it sounds like you got your hands full, Gil. I'm glad you could take the time to tell me more about Magic Power, All-Star Tribute to Triumph, and that comes out on June 6th through Round Hill Records, and a great collection of songs from a great rock and roll band that I enjoyed listening to when I was younger and still today.
Well, thanks, George. I mean, we're really honored that the musicians that participated. It's kind of like this to all of them, and of course Mike Klink for masterminding the whole thing. So it's a great experience, and we're looking forward to the release as well.
And they're like that, just back to you as well.
Thank you.